In 2013, 8-year-old Gizzell Ford lost her life after she was murdered by those who were supposed to protect her father, Andre Ford, and his mother, Helen Ford. On July 12, 2013, Gizzell's 70-pound body was found among the debris inside of her family's trash-filled apartment. She had been beaten and strangled to death. Her hands and ankles had been bound, and electrical wire was wrapped around the bottom of a bedpost. Gizzy had gaping wounds on the back of her head, which were infested with maggots. She was covered in bruises and abrasions from head to toe, with injuries in various stages of healing. She was strangled, but an autopsy showed that Gizzell was already dying due to kidney failure. The Fords refused to give her any food or water, which took a deadly toll on her frail body. An investigation revealed that Andre Ford and Helen Ford tortured and abused Gizzy during the entire 8 months she was in the home. She died as a result of this abuse. Let's get into it. Gizzy's mother, Sandra Mercado, lost custody of her after losing her home. Rather than place her in the care of the Illinois Children and Family Services, the state of Illinois placed Gizzy in the home of her father, Andre, an unemployed felon, and his mother, 55-year-old Helen Ford. Gizzy was miserable from the beginning of this transition. Sadness reflected in her numerous journal entries. Sandra tried to get her daughter back helplessly, but for 8 months, Gizzell remained with Andre and his mother. Sandra had met Andre while working for a time with his mother. Their 2-year dating relationship ended in 2004, the year Gizzell was born. Sandra long resisted Andre Ford's efforts to be involved in his daughter's life, according to court records. Andre petitioned Cook County's Domestic Relations Court for shared custody in June of 2010. Sandra fought back. "I have taken care of my little girl on my own for 6 years with no help from her father," she wrote in a court filing. "Her father hasn't done anything for her and has been in and out of her life since birth." Sandra won custody of Gizzell, but the dispute continued over the next 2 years, mostly with the two arguing over the mother's compliance with the father's visitation. In November 2012, Andre raised more serious allegations against Sandra while seeking emergency custody of their daughter. Misspelling his daughter's name in the court petition, he alleged that Sandra hadn't let him see Gizzell for a year, but that he had heard her mother was homeless, wandering the streets at night with Gizzy and an infant sibling, court records show. The next day, Judge Lionel Jean Baptist, the 8th judge whose name appears in paperwork in the contested custody case, granted the father temporary custody based on these claims and that Sandra might be moving out of the state. Denying the allegations, Sandra immediately filed for the return of Gizzell. While trying to sort out the dispute, the judge ordered an emergency intervention that a child might be in danger. As part of that process, a court expert interviewed both parents, Helen Ford and Gizzell. But domestic relationship judges presiding over private disputes between parents concerning custody and child support do not have access to the same experts or legal resources as in child protection courtrooms in cases in which the state has taken a child into protective custody. For instance, DCFS and lawyers with the state attorneys or public guardian offices are not regularly assigned to these courtrooms. As a result, it is unclear what the judge knew about the work, family, mental, and criminal backgrounds of Helen and Andre, who respectively had 1985 forgery charges and a 2002 attempted robbery convictions in their past. But, as prosecutors later note, the grandmother was great at working the levers of the court. At a December 2012 custody hearing, the judge followed the recommendation of an intervention expert that Gizzell remain with the Fords. The court found Gizzell is now safe and comfortable at the home of the Fords, and that the mother had been in and out of at least 4 homes in a year. Sandra was granted supervised visitation twice a week in order to undergo a psychological evaluation and parenting classes. Months later, July 2013, Gizzell was killed just a couple of weeks shy of her 9th birthday. Sandra and her family said they had last seen her in April, blaming the Fords for blocking visits. Gizzell's maternal grandfather, Juan Mercado, had stated that he was present at court and denied a chance to be interviewed or tell the judge that his daughter was not homeless and that she and Gizzell had lived with him until recently in Melrose Park. There was no way of knowing the horror that Gizzell was facing, not until prosecutors got a hold of her rainbow-colored diary. It was there that Gizzell wrote about her grandmother was torturing her. While the grandmother carried out the terrible actions against Gizzell, Andre would direct her on what to do to his daughter. Andre took pleasure in torturing his daughter when he could and watching his mother abuse her at other times. He often smiled and laughed as the abuse occurred. Chicago firefighters were called to the Fords residence about a person not breathing on July 13, 2013. Firefighters found 8-year-old Gizzell's dead body cold and covered in new and old injuries. Police found several bruises, burns, and cuts on her body, lying face up in a bedroom in the home along with blood-splattered twine, cables, and a pole. Blood was found on the bedroom wall near where her body was found. There were cuts to her face, ears, and lips, bruising and puncture wounds to her back, chest, and stomach, as well as bruising to the front and back of her neck. There was a deep laceration to her buttocks, ligature marks to the ankle and wrist, and circular burn marks similar to cigarette burns on her body. Andre and Helen was arrested and charged with Gizzell's murder. Before Gizzell's death, there were signs that things were not right in the household. Officials investigated the family but missed all the warning signs and closed the case as unfounded. Just 1 month before, an investigator from the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services visited the grandmother's cockroach-infested apartment on the city's west side as she checked out the Fords' allegations that the child had been molested by her mother's boyfriend. Gizzell was taken to the hospital. A child abuse pediatrician who examined Gizzell for possible sexual trauma didn't call the DCFS hotline about what appeared healed loop mark he noted on Gizzell. The doctor failed to question Gizzell privately about the mark outside of her grandmother's presence. Unable to find evidence of sexual trauma, he characterized the exam as normal, but noted the injury and 2 other marks on Gizzell. The DCFS investigator had access to the physician's report, but she failed to act. Later, her failures in Gizzell's care led to her firing. The pediatrician was sued by Gizzell's mother. Gizzell was kept in the apartment as a virtual prisoner after school ended in the mid-June 2013. She wrote her own account of her final days in a diary that was found after her death. The cover was stripped with rainbows, and she used a pink marker to record her thoughts. For the first few entries, Gizzell, known to friends as Gizzy, wrote about typical third-grade things: jump roping, school teachers, clothes, and friends. "I am going to be a beautiful, smart, and good young lady," she wrote one day. "I can do anything I put my smart mind to. People say I'm smart and courteous and beautiful," the honor student wrote at the time she was a healthy, strong, and vital girl. After she was taken to live with the Fords, her tone became more somber. "I hate this life. I really think that I am a jerk," she wrote in her journal. The straight-A student dreamed of the start of school in August, she wrote, when she could leave home for the safety of 4th grade. Toward the end of her life, much of her once neat handwriting was barely legible as she began detailing the abuse she allegedly suffered at the hands of her grandmother. I know if I be good and do everything I'm told, I won't have to do punishments, Gizzell wrote. She described how she had been forced to squat for hours and told to stand in one place for an hour or two. I hope that I don't mess up today because I really want to be able to just sit down and watch TV, talk, and play with everybody, Gizzell wrote in the same entry. I'm going to be great all day. On July 12, 2013, she wrote her last entry. I hate this life because now I am in super big trouble. The next day, the girl who was once a straight-A student, badly beaten body was found on the floor of her father's bedroom. Andre would never pay for his crimes. He died of a heart attack in Cook County Jail in 2014 while awaiting trial. However, Helen had a bench trial in March of 2017. The prosecution introduced Gizzell's diaries as well as other disturbing evidence against Helen. When photos of an extremely starved and beaten Gizzy were shown in court, it was hard for many not to become emotional. A cell phone video was played that allegedly showed Helen berating Gizzy for breaking house rules. Gizzy stood silently, terrified, with a sock stuck in her mouth. Gizzell had a terrific smile, beautiful full hair, and wonderful penmanship. A medical examiner told the judge that hair on Gizzell's head had been pulled out and described a gasping wound that had been infested with maggots while she was still alive. What Helen did to her reduced the child to something completely unrecognizable, said Cook County Assistant State Attorney. Gizzell's 10-year-old half-brother also took the stand, testifying about abuse that he too had allegedly received at the hands of his grandmother. Speaking softly, the boy told the judge that Helen would beat him with a belt. He said that she forced him to do squats as punishments. The boy testified he had seen his grandmother use a spatula to hit Gizzell in the mouth. He also said that she would force Gizzell to eat hot pepper or stand in contouring positions for hours on end. As he described his little sister, he began to burst into tears. She was very nice, he said on the stand. She liked to make friends. She liked to play. Her cousin told the court Gizzy was tied to her father's bed for up to a week at a time and denied food and water and only allowed off to use the bathroom. And she was once punished for being caught trying to drink from the toilet. Helen's public defender, Judy Smith, acknowledged the tragedy of the case in her opening statements, but she characterized Helen as overworked, overwhelmed, and overcome, with the daily responsibilities of taking care of a bedridden son and 3 grandchildren. Smith also alleged that many of Gizzell's injuries were self-inflicted. She was a tragically troubled young lady, Smith said. She coped by injuring herself. Helen didn't know how to say no. Helen never said no because she put family first. Helen took the witness stand during a 5-hour sentencing hearing and described the routine of her days caring for her bedridden son, Gizzell, and 2 other children. She approached the bench walking with a cane and spoke so quietly the judge allowed her to take the witness stand where there was a microphone. Helen said Gizzell would grow angry at her father, who had a chronic disease that robbed him of his mobility, and at her mother, who lost custody of her a few months before Gizzell died. I never treated my granddaughter any different than anybody else, she said. Judge Evelyn Clay, normally soft-spoken, cut Helen off as the woman began to talk about Gizzell throwing herself around. Miss Ford, enough, Clay said. Your Honor, it's the truth, Ford said, as sheriff deputies reached to help her from the witness stand. This was a heinous torture murder, which took place slowly, while Gizzell was imprisoned in Helen Ford's apartment, Judge Clay said. This is a deliberate, excruciating, painful way to die. Helen was practically zero potential for rehabilitation, Clay said during sentencing, citing her lack of remorse on the witness stands moments before. No, Gizzell did not throw herself around, which brought about her death, Judge Clay said. That child's murder was intentional and involved the infliction of torture. Judge Evelyn Clay handed down the natural life sentence after hearing family members describe the 55-year-old as a mother figure unable to say no to family members in need. No, Helen Ford did know how to say no, said a scrawling Clay. She did know how to say no to Gizzell. No water, no food, no sleep, no praise. She did not say yes to the basic requirements of human care. Clay then sentenced Ford to life in prison, the harshest sentence she could have imposed. Sandra had filed a civil lawsuit against the state claiming a DCFS caseworker had visited the Austin home where Gizzell lived and ignored the apparent signs of abuse. Child abuse pediatrician negligent in his treatment of Gizzell Ford. He treated her several weeks before she was found strangled, starved, and beaten inside her grandmother's Chicago apartment. The lawsuit filed by Gizzell's family accused him of failing to immediately alert authorities to possible signs, failing to ask basic questions about the injuries he uncovered in an exam, and failing to properly document his findings. He examined Gizzell as a part of a molestation investigation initiated by Andre and his mother against Sandra's boyfriend. A jury awarded $48 million to Sandra. However, the insurer of Cook County, which employed Dr. Rosado in the hospital system at the time he examined Gizzell, will pay the penalty. Dr. Rosado, who now works at Lurie Children's Hospital of Chicago, said he saw no signs of physical abuse when he examined Gizzell. The abrasions he saw on her legs and buttocks were no concern for abuse. He reported his findings to the State Departments of Children and Family Services 16 days before the child's death. According to one of his lawyers, the pediatrician had conducted more than 3,000 child abuse exams in his 17-year career. He had also trained over 1,000 doctors and had testified for the state in 40 criminal trials. Sandra, 35, said she never suspected the Fords were abusing Gizzell. She blames herself for not doing more in those final months by trying to either enforce her visitation rights or win back custody in court. She remembered Gizzell as a kind child who always had a smile on her face. I don't want any mom to ever have their child taken away from them unfairly, she stated. There needs to be safeguards in place at every step of a child custody dispute where the number one interest is the child. The system is broken and failed Gizzell every step of the way. So my daughter-in-law sent me this story and I had never heard it until then. So I definitely wanted to take some time and share it with you guys. Alright guys, that is it for me. Sorry it took me a long time to get something back out. I had just recently had foot surgery, so I have been down for a little bit. But don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Comment below what you think about this story. Until next time, take care of you.